What's up, everybody? Rich Adams here from the Devy to Dynasty content team and the co-host of the Canton C2C podcast. We had some unbelievable performances week one, both individual performances and team performances. And then we had some performances that left us scratching our head, wondering what the heck happened. How did we get this one wrong? Either way you look at it, it's time to turn the page. We're moving to week two. All right, so before we get to the week two starts and sits, let's do just a little bit of a recap from week one. All right. As a reminder, the point thresholds for each position, it's 20 points for a quarterback, 15 points for running back and wide receiver, and then also 15 points for tight ends when you're using a 1.5 tight end premium. All right. So let's get with the starts from week one first. We started quarterback Siobhan Cordero out of San Jose State. He was a hit. It was 25.5 points last week in a really good game for him. The first running back, however, Tay McWilliams out of Baylor, that was a miss. Unfortunately, it did not produce as I had expected. He was able to get 10.5 points, just below that 15-point threshold. The second running back that we started, however, Chase Brown, the running back from Illinois, completely crushed it, had a huge game against Indiana. He was a hit. He got 21.5 points last week. The first wide receiver that we started, Rashee Rice, he absolutely dominated. All right, he was a hit. He had 30.6 points for that SMU offense. Big day for him. Same. The next wide receiver that we started, Tavion Robinson out of Kentucky. He was also a hit. 19.6 fantasy points, and he really established himself as that number one option for Will Levis. The tight end that we started didn't even come close. Unfortunately for Marshawn Ford out of Louisville, him and the Louisville offense as a whole really struggled against Syracuse in week one. He was only able to get 4.2 points. Let's transition to the sits in week one. We sat quarterback Grayson McCall from Coastal Carolina. Man, was I wrong on this one. Thought process was Army was going to run the ball, run the clock, really limit the opportunities for that Coastal Carolina offense. Didn't happen that way. He scored 27.6 fantasy points. So that's a miss. The first running back that we sat was Will Shipley, the running back out of Clemson. He had 2 touchdowns on the day, so really salvaged his day. That's a miss. He had 18.6 points in week one. The other running back that we sat was Byron Cardwell out of Oregon. This turned out to be a good decision as that Georgia Bulldogs defense really stifled what the entire Oregon offense was able to do, and he was only able to get 5.6 fantasy points. The first wide receiver that we sat was Jadon Hazelwood out of Arkansas. This was a hit, just barely. He scored 13 points, just missing out on that 15-point threshold. He did score a touchdown on the day, but came up those 2 points short, so that's a hit. The other wide receiver that we're sitting is Troy Franklin out of Oregon. Once again, playing the Georgia Bulldogs defense. Wasn't able to get anything going. 5.4 points on the day. The tight end that I said to sit, I'm not going to count towards the record for the week. It's Jaleel Billingsley. At the time of the recording, I had forgot that he was actually suspended by the University of Texas and would not be playing in week one. So overall, in week one, we went 7-4. Not a bad week. Let's see if we can improve upon that in week two. All right, so let's get into the starts for week two. The quarterback that we are going to start this week is Garrett Schrader, the quarterback from Syracuse. So Schrader comes off a performance where he had a very good day against Louisville. He scored 33 fantasy points, really controlled that offense. Syracuse goes on and they take on a UConn team that's giving up almost 400 yards per game on average. Schrader's ability as a runner is going to make him a weekly fantasy relevant player. I really think that Schrader and the whole Syracuse offense is going to have a very good day against the Huskies in week two. The first running back that we're going to start, Keaton Mitchell out of East Carolina. So Mitchell and the Pirates, they had a very difficult matchup in week one against NC State. They played them really, really tough. It was a very, very good game. Unfortunately, the Pirates really could not get anything going on the ground. But Mitchell's ability as a receiver really salvaged his day. It gives him that safe floor on a week in and week out basis. East Carolina plays a much easier opponent in Old Dominion in week two. I'd watch for Mitchell to have a big day, both on the ground and in the passing game. The second running back that we are going to start, it's going to be Anthony Grant out of Nebraska. So, Grant has been one of the lone positives for a Huskers team that really has underperformed through the first 2 games of the season. He has established himself as the unquestioned lead running back in that room, and he has scored 24 plus fantasy points in both contests. I think that Scott Frost is really going to establish the run early against Georgia Southern and just feed Grant the rock the whole game. The first wide receiver that we are going to start is Ricky White out of UNLV. Ricky White put together a monster performance in week 0. He had 8 receptions, 182 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, UNLV did have a bye during week 1. They come back this week. They do play a much tougher opponent in Cal. I'd expect the Rebels to get behind early and really have to lean on that passing game. I think that White should benefit from the volume, as he is that clear-cut number 1 option in the offense. So look for him to have a good game. Next, we're going to start Trey Horton, the wide receiver from Colorado State. Once again, Colorado State had a very difficult matchup in week 1. They had to go to Michigan, play them on the road. That they're overmatched in every aspect of the game. All right. The entire Colorado State offense is ready to be unleashed this week. They play Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee is a team that just gave up 548 yards of offense to James Madison. I expect Horton, Melquan Stovall, and Clay Millen to all be fantasy relevant most weeks the rest of the way. The tight end that we are going to start, George Takix, the tight end from Boston College. Takix is coming off of a performance against Rutgers. He had 7 receptions and 84 yards. He's established himself as that second option for Phil Jerkovich and the Eagles offense. I think that the Virginia Tech defense is going to focus on stopping Zay Flowers, and that could open up some space in the middle of the field for Takix as a dump off and an outlet for Phil Jerkovich. So look for him to have a nice game. So let's recap the starts for week 2. We're going to start quarterback Garrett Schrader out of Syracuse. We're starting Keaton Mitchell, the running back from East Carolina, and Anthony Grant, the running back from Nebraska. The 2 wide receivers that we're going to start, Ricky White out of UNLV and Trey Horton out of Colorado State. And once again, we're going to start George Takix, the tight end from Boston College. All right, it's time for the week 2 sits. Let's kick it off with quarterback Will Levis out of Kentucky. So Will Levis in Kentucky, they head to Gainesville. They're going to play a Florida defense that's going to look to replicate what they did last season against Kentucky. Levis had one of his worst performances of the year. He only threw for 87 yards. I think that the Gators defense is going to look to apply pressure to not only the offensive line, but obviously Will Levis himself. And I think that they're going to force Levis into making some mistakes. I think that the Wildcats offense is in for a rough day. And because of that, I'm going to sit Will Levis in week 2. The first running back that I'm going to sit this week, it's Israel Abanikanda. Abanikanda was unable to capitalize in week 1 when they were facing West Virginia. On top of that lack of production, fellow running back Rodney Hammond really did make the most of his touches. He had 129 total yards and 2 touchdowns. Hammond did get injured late in that game, so keep an eye on that. If he is able to play, I think that Izzy is going to be that second option in the backfield, and I just rather avoid that situation and play somebody else that I feel more confident in. The second running back that I'm going to sit this week is Marshawn Lloyd out of South Carolina. So Marshawn Lloyd ended the season, ton of buzz. We were all hoping that he was back. He was going to be 100%, just like he was a former recruit, high recruit coming into college, and then he tears his ACL his freshman season. Unfortunately, week 1 showed that that's not going to be the case. He's only able to get 30 yards rushing against Georgia State. He was able to salvage the day with a receiving touchdown, but that's not going to happen on a weekly basis. South Carolina does get a much tougher opponent this week when they play Arkansas. I think Arkansas is really going to limit that space for Lloyd, and he's in for another rough week in week 2. The first wide receiver that I am sitting is Xavier Worthy, the wide receiver from Texas. So Worthy had an unusually quiet week 1 performance. He only had 24 yards receiving. Normally, it would be wheels up for a massive week 2 performance. Unfortunately for Worthy in Texas, they play Alabama in week 2. I'm looking for the entire Longhorns offense to really struggle against the number 1 team in the country. And I'm really hoping that week 3 is that launch point for Worthy in year 2. The second wide receiver that I am sitting is Mario Williams, the wide receiver from USC. The number of options in that USC offense is going to regularly limit the opportunities for Williams. Unfortunately, Caleb Williams likes to spread the ball around the field as well. So all of the Trojan weapons are going to be are basically boom or bust for me. Williams really has to prove that he is the established 1 or 2 in that offense and commanding a target share, right? Otherwise, I'm just going to play somebody else that I feel more confident in. And once Williams is able to show me that he is going to get those targets on a regular basis, then I'll put him back in the lineup. The tight end that I am sitting this week is Sam LaPorta, the tight end from Iowa. Iowa's putrid offense. They get a very difficult opponent this week in Iowa State. All right, this is a Hawkeyes offense that was unable to score a touchdown against an FCS opponent in South Dakota State last week. They only had 109 passing yards. I can't trust anybody from this Iowa offense until they prove that they can move the ball effectively and regularly and also put points on the board. Until they prove that, I'm going elsewhere for my starters. So let's recap the sits. The quarterback that we are sitting is Will Levis from Kentucky. The running backs that we're sitting is Israel Abanaconda from Pittsburgh and Marshawn Lloyd from South Carolina. We're sitting Xavier Worthy, the wide receiver from Texas, and Mario Williams, the wide receiver from USC. And then once again, we're going to sit Sam LaPorta, the tight end from Iowa. So that's going to do it for the week 2 starts and sits. Best of luck this week in all of your matchups, and we'll see you before week 3. Take care.